Hello and welcome to the Safe Place podcast, Blue Oak Counselling. I'm Steve and I'm really glad you're here. This is a trauma-informed counselling podcast for Australians seeking support, clarity and hope after trauma. In this podcast, we explore trauma, recovery, mental health and counselling in a way that is clear, compassionate and grounded in real life. Today's episode is called Trauma and Anxiety When Your Mind Won't Switch Off. Before we begin, a gentle note that today's episode touches on trauma, anxiety, panic, hypervigilance, and emotional distress. Please listen at your own pace. If anything feels overwhelming, it is okay to pause, take a break, and come back when you feel ready. Today I want to spend some real time with anxiety, because anxiety after trauma is one of those experiences that can take over daily life, without always being understood for what it is. It can look like overthinking from the outside, but on the inside, it often feels much deeper than that. It can feel like a body that never quite settles, a mind that keeps scanning, and a private sense that something could go wrong at any moment. A lot of people describe this as never being able to switch off. They can be physically tired, emotionally drained, and desperate for a bit of peace, yet still feel alert inside. They might finally get through the day, sit down, and notice that they are not actually resting. They are monitoring. They are anticipating. They are replaying conversations, reading tone into messages, thinking through tomorrow, and trying to stay one step ahead of whatever might go wrong next. That kind of anxiety is exhausting because it is not just fear, it is effort. It is the effort of carrying an invisible internal workload all day long. Many people become so used to that workload that they stop seeing it clearly. They just think, this is how I am now. I am just an anxious person. But when trauma sits underneath that anxiety, the story can be much more complex and much more understandable than simple self-criticism allows. One of the most important ideas in trauma-informed care is that many trauma responses are adaptive. In plain language, that means they make sense in the context of what a person has lived through. Australian trauma-informed guidance makes this point very clearly. Trauma affects regulation, relationships, behaviour, emotions, and the sense of safety. Survival responses are not random quirks. They are often the body and mind doing their best to protect the person from further harm. That matters because it changes the question. Instead of asking what is wrong with me, we can begin asking what might my system be trying to protect me from. That is not just a nice sounding reframe, it is often the beginning of a much kinder and much more accurate understanding of anxiety after trauma. If your mind will not stop thinking, it may be trying to prevent you from being caught off guard. If you are always scanning other people, your system may be trying to keep you safe by spotting shifts early. If uncertainty feels unbearable, it may be because uncertainty no longer feels neutral. If your body stays tense even in ordinary situations, it may be because calm does not yet feel fully safe. Seen this way, anxiety can start to look less like personal weakness and more like an overworked protection system. That does not mean the anxiety is useful in its current form. It does not mean every fear is accurate. It certainly does not mean people should simply accept being worn down by it forever, but it does mean there is usually a function underneath it. And when we understand the function, we are in a much better position to respond with care instead of contempt. One of the hardest parts of trauma-related anxiety is the gap between what you know and what you feel. You can know you are safe and still not feel safe. You can know a conversation is ordinary and still feel your chest tighten. You can know a person is not the one who hurt you and still feel on edge around them. You can know you locked the door and still feel the urge to check it again. That gap is deeply frustrating because it makes people feel irrational. But often it is not irrationality. It is the nervous system responding from old learning rather than present facts. This is where reassurance sometimes falls short. A person can tell themselves, I'm fine, nothing bad is happening, and part of them may believe it. But another part stays tight anyway. That does not mean the person is failing at logic. It means trauma, anxiety often sits deeper than conscious thought alone. It can live in the body, in attention, in expectation, and in the speed with which the system moves into alert. Trauma guidance from Phoenix, Australia describes trauma reactions as including heightened alertness, distress, avoidance, and arousal. Those patterns are often exactly what people are describing when they say their mind will not switch off. It is not only that they worry, it is that they remain prepared. Their system continues to act as if danger may still need to be anticipated. This is one reason trauma anxiety is so tiring. It often disguises itself as thinking. It can sound like problem solving, but it is problem solving with a frightened edge. It is not reflective thought, it is protective thought. The mind keeps searching for certainty, trying to work out what something means, what could happen next, what signs were missed, and what can be done now to avoid getting hurt later. Many people notice that uncertainty becomes especially hard after trauma. Uncertainty is uncomfortable for most humans, but trauma can make it feel actively threatening. If your life has taught you that things can shift suddenly, that safety can disappear quickly, or that what looked normal one moment can become dangerous the next, then not knowing what is coming may stop feeling like a simple inconvenience. It may start to feel like risk, and once that happens, the anxious mind often starts trying to close the gap. It wants clarity. It wants reassurance. It wants to know what the other person meant, whether the situation is stable, whether the plan will change, whether the body symptom means something serious, whether something bad is already beginning. And because certainty is rarely fully available in ordinary life, the mind can end up looping. It thinks one more pass through the possibilities will finally make everything feel settled. Usually it does not. Usually it just keeps the system activated. Hypervigilance is a big part of this. Hypervigilance is more than being observant. It is a nervous system that does not really clock off. It keeps reading the room. It keeps watching tone, mood, movement, silence, timing, and atmosphere. It notices the sigh, the pause, the look away, the door slam, the change in pace, the shift in energy. Sometimes people with trauma histories become extremely good at picking up subtle cues. That skill can look impressive from the outside, but inside it is often driven by fear, not ease. That is worth saying because hypervigilance can be mistaken for personality. People may think, I'm just very perceptive, or I'm just naturally alert, and perhaps they are. But when perception turns into surveillance and alertness becomes exhausting, trauma anxiety may be part of the picture. Hypervigilance can look like competence while feeling like fatigue. Anxiety after trauma is not always loud either. Not everyone looks visibly distressed. Some people become highly organised, highly prepared, and highly controlled. They show up early, they plan carefully, they check details repeatedly, they struggle when plans change, they prefer to stay ahead of things at all times. From the outside, that can look like reliability. Sometimes it is reliability, but sometimes it is reliability powered by fear. This is one of the more difficult truths about trauma anxiety. It can hide behind competence. A person can appear very capable while privately feeling as though they are only holding things together by not letting go for a second. They may not look panicked, but they are not peaceful either. They are managing, they are bracing, they are functioning with effort. That effort also shows up in the body. Trauma anxiety is rarely just mental. Many people feel it physically before they fully name it. They notice it in the chest, the stomach, the throat, the jaw, the shoulders, the breath, and the skin. They may feel wired, tight, shaky, nauseous, restless, or unable to settle. Research and clinical guidance consistently link trauma-related anxiety with physiological arousal, and many people with trauma histories experience the body as part of the alarm system, not just the mind. That physical side of anxiety matters because it can make the whole experience feel more convincing. It is one thing to have a worried thought. It is another thing to feel your heart race, your chest tighten, or your stomach drop, and then try to tell yourself not to worry. Once the body joins in, anxiety can feel very real and very immediate. In fact, the body can become both the messenger and the thing being monitored by the messenger. You notice a body sensation, then become anxious about the sensation, which increases the body response, which then confirms to the anxious part of you that something must indeed be wrong. Panic is a more intense example of the same pattern. Panic can feel as though the system has gone from watchful to emergency in seconds. The body surges, attention narrows, and the person can feel convinced that something terrible is happening. When panic occurs in the context of trauma, it may be linked to cues that are obvious or subtle. A sound, a smell, a feeling of being trapped, a body sensation, a shift in someone's tone, or a situation that faintly resembles an earlier danger can all be enough to activate the system quickly. This is one reason shame is so unhelpful when anxiety spikes. People often say harsh things to themselves in the middle of it. I'm overreacting, I'm ridiculous, I should be over this, but shame usually adds fuel rather than calm. It is hard enough to have an alarm system that goes off quickly. It is even harder when the person then punishes themselves for having one. Trauma-informed care asks us to move away from that punishing stance. It asks us to understand before we judge. The Australian Institute of Family Studies describes trauma-informed approaches as those that understand, recognise, and respond to the effects of trauma. That principle matters just as much in the way people speak to themselves as it does in formal care settings. Another reason anxiety after trauma can be so difficult is that it starts to colour ordinary life. Small things can begin to feel loaded. A delayed reply can feel significant. An unclear email can sit heavily. A slight shift in another person's mood can pull attention sharply. A change of plans can create more activation than seems reasonable from the outside. The person often knows their reaction looks big compared with the event. That can be embarrassing. But from a trauma-informed point of view, the question is not whether the outside event was small. The question is what meaning the system assigned to it. If silence has once meant danger, then a delayed reply might not feel small. If sudden mood changes once meant harm, then tone might not feel small. If unpredictability once meant chaos, then a change of plan might not feel small. This does not mean every interpretation is correct, but it does mean there is often more sense in the reaction than the person realises. Sleep is often where this all becomes impossible to ignore. By the end of the day, many people with trauma anxiety are exhausted. They want rest badly, but bedtime requires letting go, and letting go can feel risky to a system still scanning for threat. The body may remain on alert. Thoughts may become louder in the quiet. The mind may start replaying the day, rehearsing tomorrow, and filling the dark with every unresolved possibility. So the person becomes tired, but not settled, and that combination can wear people down over time. Part of the counselling work around trauma anxiety is helping people understand that their reactions are not random. Understanding does not solve everything, but it changes the emotional climate in which healing happens. A person who sees their anxiety only as failure will usually approach themselves with frustration or shame. A person who begins to see anxiety as an overworked protection response often has more room for curiosity, and curiosity is usually much more regulating than self-attack. That curiosity can sound like, what happens in my body first? When do I start scanning? What kind of uncertainty gets under my skin most quickly? What happens just before my mind begins to spiral? What helps me feel even slightly steadier? Those are useful questions because they bring anxiety out of the realm of personal defect and into the realm of pattern and understanding. Grounding can help here, not as a magic trick and not as a command to stop feeling anxious, but as a way of helping the body orient to the present. Sometimes that means noticing your feet on the floor, looking around the room slowly, softening the shoulders, slowing the exhale a little, or saying to yourself where you are right now. What matters is not doing it perfectly. What matters is helping the system register a bit more of now. Something else that matters is pace. Trauma anxiety does not usually respond well to being bullied. Some people try to force themselves out of it through sheer discipline. Sometimes that just creates another layer of stress. Trauma-informed care places a strong emphasis on safety, trust, choice, collaboration, and not overwhelming the person. Those principles are relevant here. A nervous system that has learned to be on guard may need calm, consistency, and repetition more than pressure. Support also matters. Good trauma-informed counselling should not feel like being pushed, analysed, or rushed into the deepest material before enough safety exists. It should help the person make sense of what is happening, recognise patterns, notice activation earlier, and build more ways of responding that do not depend entirely on scanning and bracing. It should feel respectful of the person's pace and experience. That does not mean anxiety disappears overnight. It often does not. But understanding can reduce shame, and reduced shame can make room for steadier support. Over time, many people can learn that not every uncertainty is danger, not every body sensation is catastrophe, and not every shift in atmosphere means harm is on the way. Those are not changes people usually think their way into all at once. They are changes that often emerge through repeated experiences of safety, understanding, and support. I also want to say that trauma anxiety does not make you weak. In fact, many anxious people have survived an enormous amount. Their system is not fragile because it reacts strongly. Often it reacts strongly because it had to learn quickly and deeply. The problem is not that the system learned. The problem is that it may still be applying old rules in places where those rules are no longer needed in the same way. If you have been living with a mind that will not switch off, it may help to remember that the goal is not to become careless or disconnected from reality. The goal is not to stop noticing everything. The goal is to help your system learn that it does not need to stay at full alert all the time. There is a difference between awareness and alarm. A lot of healing involves slowly widening that difference. So if you take one thing from today's episode, let it be this. Trauma can leave the mind and body expecting danger, and that expectation can sound and feel a lot like anxiety. It can show up as constant thinking, scanning, bracing, and the inability to settle. But those reactions are not signs that you are broken. They may be signs that your system learned to survive by staying ready. And with the right understanding and support, that system can begin to learn something different. If anything in today's episode has brought up distress for you, please be gentle with yourself and consider reaching out to your GP, a qualified counsellor, psychologist, or a trusted support person. If you are in immediate danger in Australia, call 000. If you need immediate crisis support, Lifeline is available on 131114. Before we finish, please remember that this podcast is here to provide general information, education, and support, but it is not a substitute for personalised counselling, mental health care, medical advice, or crisis support. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapeutic relationship with Blue Oak Counselling or with me as the host. This podcast is copyrighted by Blue Oak Counselling, and all rights are reserved. If you found this episode helpful, please follow and subscribe to the Safe Place podcast, Blue Oak Counselling, and feel free to share it with someone who may need it too. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, take care of yourself, go gently, and remember that healing can begin with understanding.